Hello, everybody. The title of my presentation is Then We Came Home, and my name is Van Barbary. I am a Vietnam vet. I hope by the end of this presentation, you'll know why I call it Then We Came Home. See these guys here? They look like some pretty mean, bad dudes, and they were. This was back in Vietnam in the 60s and the 70s. Now, they have changed a little bit. They look a little older. When they tell their grandkids, I was a mean fighting machine at one time, they kind of look, I don't think so, Grandpa. It's hard for the young people to imagine that we were young once and we were some pretty bad dudes. Well, Vietnam got started in August of 64 when North Vietnamese gunships attacked one of our Navy destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. And because of that action, Congress authorized President Johnson to send in combat troops into Vietnam. So that's how it all got started. Well, 1 year later, I received a letter from the President of the United States, as did many other young men, saying, "Greetings, you are hereby ordered for induction to the Armed Forces of the United States." Told me to report on September the 7th, 1965 to the Induction Center. Well, I had 2 weeks to get all my act together, say my goodbyes. I had some goodbye parties. My girlfriend and my family dropped me off at the induction center where they were going to swear us in. They had to say that we would solemnly swear that we would support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then at the end, when we said, "So help me God," at that time, we were no longer civilian, but we belonged to the United States Army for the next 2 years. Well, that was a big transition to make. The 2 weeks prior, before I got that letter from the president, I was 20 years old. I had a job, I had a girlfriend, and I had a car. Life was good. And then you get the letter from the president, and next thing you know, you are committed for the next 2 years to being in the Army. Well, later that day, they flew us to Fort Polk, Louisiana, about 1,800 miles from my home. And the very first thing they did was give us haircuts. And not just a normal haircut you get, they shaved our heads. We all look alike except for the color of our skin and the civilian clothes we were wearing. Well, the next thing they did was take us to the quartermaster, and we stripped down, and they had us go through this line where they gave us this duffel bag, and they gave us underwear, shoes, socks, fatigues, dress uniforms, coats, ponchos, helmets, hats, gloves, bayonets, canteens, the whole thing, and we're stuffing it all in this duffel bag. And by the time we came out, now we all look like each other, except for the color of our skin or the name tag they sewed on our uniform. Well, they took us to our company we're going to be at for the next 8 weeks of our training, and we met our drill sergeants, Sergeant Goody, Sergeant Putman, and Sergeant Smith. These were the meanest old guys I ever encountered with those Smokey the Bear hats. They just put the fear of God in you every time they talk. When they told you to do something, you didn't doubt it at all. You just did it as immediately as you could. Well, their job was to change us civilians from what we were a day or two before and start acting, thinking, and behaving like soldiers. And they were very good at their job. Every day we exercised for 2 to 3 hours doing jumping jacks, sit-ups, push-ups, all kinds of exercise. We marched to all the different classes we went to. The first thing they issued to us was rifles. We learned how to make sure we took care of it, cleaned it, how to shoot it, that was going to be a part of our lives for the next 2 years. So you want to make sure you took the very best care of it, that it's always operating properly. They gave us bayonets and taught us how to fight with a bayonet on the rifle. From there, they took us to the hand grenade course where we learned how to throw grenades. First, you start off with a dummy grenade to get the feel of it, and then they gave you the real thing. Once you pulled the pin and let go of the handle, you had 4.7 seconds before that was going to go. So that was a little scary, but you got used to it. Then we did a lot of hand-to-hand combat training. And by the end of the 8 weeks, after they taught us all military code of conduct and everything we need to know about the military, and made it, I went in 130, I came out 165, and that was all muscle. Now I looked like a soldier, I felt like a soldier, I was acting like a soldier. I was ready to take on the world. That was the end of the basic training. Now it was off to advanced training. And because I was drafted, I had no choice where they're going to send me. I ended up at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, where I was going to become an ammunition specialist. I know what's an ammunition specialist. Well, I was going to learn everything about explosives from the smallest bullet to missiles, how to handle it, how they worked, everything about it. And that was a 4 month course. And when the course was over, I had orders for Vietnam. But first, they gave me 2 weeks, and I got to go home, be with my girlfriend and my family. Somebody wanted to take me out every night for dinner. And it was kind of a strange feeling because I was getting this feeling that they were thinking this is the last time we were going to see each other. I was going off to war. Not everybody goes off to war, comes back alive. So this could be our last meal. So it was a kind of eerie feeling. They never said it. It was just a feeling I was just having. The last Sunday at church, the pastor had me come before the congregation. They prayed for me. The soloist, Esther Howe, she sang Onward, Christian Soldier. The next day I was at LAX. I was going to be flying up to San Francisco to go to Oakland Army base where I was going to be deployed to Vietnam. So I had about 35, 40 people see me off, and I was boarding the plane. I turned around, and those days you could go right to the gate to say goodbye to people or welcome them home back in those days. And I was boarding the plane. I turned around one last time, and I gave a salute to everybody. And the look on their faces was like a dead man walking. It was eerie. Well, I got up to Oakland Army Base, and I was thinking I had 30 days before I was going to be at Vietnam. Why is that? I watched all the World War II movies. How did our troops get from the States to Europe, Africa, and Asia? They went by ship. So I was thinking at least 30 days before I would be in Vietnam. But this was the new modern army. And next thing I knew, I was on a plane and landing at Tan Son Nhut Air Base in South Vietnam. As the plane was taxiing to the terminal, and I was looking out the window and seeing these jet fighters, F-105s, F-104s, helicopters coming and going, I go, wow, I'm here. And then the plane came to stop, and they opened up the door, and you felt all that heat pouring in. And it was like, whoa, it is hot out there. And it was 7 o'clock at night. And then we got out of the plane, that humidity hit us and just start sweating away. Oh, this is going to take ever to get used to. But I say after a month, I adapted to the weather, okay? Well, they put us on these trucks, and we had no idea where we were going at 7 o'clock at night. But it ended up just being on the other side of the air base, what they called Camp Alpha. That's where all the everybody is new came in, and everybody is going to be going home, reported to before they shipped you to where you're going. Well, we get off the trucks, and the sergeant gathers around and said, you're going to be here about 3 days. He goes, welcome to Vietnam. But familiar yourself where all these bunkers are, because if we get under a mortar attack, you want to get in there as quickly as possible. If you're on your bunks, hit the floor, grab the mattress, put it over you, and pray it's not a direct hit. Actually, 30 days later, Tan Son Nhut and Camp Alpha was hit really hard with over 100 casualties happen. Guys that came in just like me their very first day, and guys were going home the next day. Very sad. Of course, anytime somebody dies, it's sad, but for the GI, if he died his first day or his last day, it really doesn't matter to that person, but his loved ones back home, especially the guys who are going to be coming home in the next day or two, they're expecting them to walk through the door, but instead they're getting a knock on the door from a military chaplain telling their loved one died in Vietnam. That just always broke my heart. I was curious of how many guys actually died on their first day, and it was just under 1,000 died on their first day in Vietnam. And then also I checked how many died on their last day before going home, and it was just 1448. Very sad. Well, after a few days, I was Tay Ninh province. Tay Ninh was 90 miles northwest Saigon and 10 miles east of the Cambodian border. And it was the main infiltration route that the North Vietnamese used to come into the southern part of South Vietnam. There was a lot of heavy action going on in that Tay Ninh province. I was assigned to the 550th Ordnance Detachment, and my job was to drive a forklift. Now, I don't know what you think of forklift, the ones you see at Home Depot. This was a big forklift. It could lift a lot of heavy stuff. And our job at the ammo dump was to make sure that the 25th Infantry Division never ever ran out of ammo. If they're out in the field in battle and they run out of food, run out of water, they could survive 1, 2, 3 days. But the moment you run out of ammo, your life expectancy is not very good at all. So our job was very important to make sure that never happened. Next to the ammo dump was the morgue. And every time a chopper would land there, you knew they were bringing in bodies that were just alive an hour or so before. They were killed in battle. The job they had at the morgue was to clean up the bodies, get their military dress uniforms prepared, making sure they had all their medals on it. They make sure all the paperwork is correct. And the very last thing, they put American flag over their container they were sending them home in. Now back at that soldier's home, again, there's that knock at the door, and a military chaplain is bringing the sad news that their loved one has died in Vietnam. Now, this story is old as the American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the war we have on terror, where thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of GIs have paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms we have in this country. Now, when you arrive in Vietnam, one of the first things you did was make yourself a short time calendar to keep track how many days you had before you're going to go home. Then you got down to 30 days, and everybody called you a short timer. And then it came the time that you're lifting off that plane and you're heading back to the States. And as that plane lifts off the ground, you can't imagine all the cheering and excitement that goes on. And now you kick back for 15 hours or so, heading back to the USA. And for me, it was landing at Travis Air Force Base. And again, as the plane touched down, all the cheers and everything went up. As I got off the plane, I got down on my knees and kissed the ground and said, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. I made it back home alive." Well, they put us on buses to send us to Oakland Army Base where they were going to check over our paperwork before they released us to go home. So we're on the buses, and if you ever saw a football team just win the city, state, or national championship, and they're all excited, they're all cheering, that was us. Then we're going out the gate at Travis Air Base, and as they're going out, all that excitement was just sucked out of the air. And what happened next has left a deep scar deep in my soul, along with a lot of other GIs all these years. And what was that? We were greeted by over 100 protesters calling us baby killers, murderers, stop the war, cussing at us. We're all looking at each other. What are they talking about? We left, it was just early in the war that started the Second War. Hardly anybody was back yet. There was no protesting going on. And while we're over there, the news we'd get would be from Armed Forces radio, "Good morning, Vietnam." But that was music and generic news. People would send us papers from home. Basically, we looked at the sports page. And then the military had a paper that came out once a month called Stars and Stripes. And I don't remember anything about unrest at home. So we had no idea why they kept calling us all these names. And what was this calling us baby killers? We went out our way to try to save all civilians' life, but especially children and babies. Matter of fact, a lot of guys died doing that, trying to protect the innocent, and especially those young ones. So this has been a scar also to give us that name, baby killers. It was totally false news. Well, there was just over 2.7 million of us who served in Vietnam. And a few years back, they found out that there's only like 600,000 of us still alive today. That's like just over 2.1 million of us have died since the war in Vietnam had ended. Now, this has been like the fastest rate of deaths after a war than any other wars we've been in. So they start, what's going on with Vietnam vets? Why are they dying so fast? So they start doing all their research and stuff. And what they came up with was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of guys suffer. Almost all of us suffered from it. Some shorter than others. Myself, I think it was about 5 years. I had nightmares. I always was feared we were going to be run over in our base camp. Others were never able to get over the horrors and stuff they saw. They tried drinking, maybe that would wash it away, or taking drugs, maybe that'd get rid of it. But they just end up dying of alcoholism or ODing. Then if you go to VA hospital, you're going to see all these guys walking around, some of them still in their military uniforms, long hair, beards, their eyes are all glossy, they're high on something, they're looking for help over all these years. They still think they're in Vietnam. They still think they're in battle. They never made that adjustment from being a soldier to civilian life. And I can understand that. Things they saw, especially the combat veteran, day in and day out, the horrors of war. Imagine if you're on patrol and the guy in front of you steps on a mine and you see his legs get blown off. Or a mortar round goes off next to you and you see the scrap metal cuts the guy's guts in front of you and they're all pouring out and you're trying to push them all back in, waiting for a medic or a medevac to get him out, hoping to save his life. And this goes on day in and day out for a year. Some of your missions is one day in, one day out, but most of them are for a week, two, maybe three. You're wearing the same clothes every day. You're walking through mud and rice paddies in the jungle, booby traps, dealing with snakes, scorpion, the enemy trying to kill you. You're sleeping on the ground. You're eating sea rations. And this goes on day after day after day. And then it finally comes time where they say, well, thank you for your service. You could go back home now into your civilian life and live a nice life. Well, my friends, there's just no switch that just turns off and then you could turn it back on again and go live a normal life. That's why so many guys died early, committed suicide, drank themselves, or OD'd on drugs. Another reason, all the wounds and stuff we brought home with us. Like I said, there's just over 2.7 million of us who served in Vietnam. 58,000, over 58,000 had died in Vietnam with their names on that wall in Washington, D.C. Over 300,000 were wounded, and over 75,000 were severely disabled, and over 5,000 lost a limb, and over 1,000 lost multiple limbs. We were banged up pretty bad. Another big reason so many deaths was this chemical they were spraying down on the vegetation, saying it's only going to kill the plants because the enemy won't have a place to hide, called Agent Orange. The science of today told us that it only kills the vegetation. It doesn't do anything to you guys. We trusted the government. We believed them. And then as the years went by and thousands and thousands and thousands of guys have died from all these different illnesses, they have come to the conclusion that it was because of their exposure to Agent Orange. In fact, they have found roughly over 300,000 veterans, Vietnam veterans, had died from their exposure to Agent Orange. That is 5 times more than have their names on that wall in Washington, D.C. You know, some of us thought we survived the war. We got over all those memories. We tried to live a normal life, married, have children, thinking the war was behind us. But we didn't know we brought back something that was eating away at us slowly, picking us off one by one. Myself, I had prostate cancer 20 years ago, and it was determined it was from my exposure to Agent Orange. Fortunately, mine was caught early, and I'm still with you today. But for thousands and thousands of guys, that did not happen. Now you'll see 2 Vietnam vets walking down the street, and you see them greet each other and say, hey, welcome home. You go, welcome home? You guys have been home for over 50 years. What are you saying welcome home for? Because what I told you before, we did not get that welcome home. We got cursed at and called all kinds of different lies. While we were in Vietnam, we kept visualizing what our parents went through when they came back from World War II to ticker tape parades, girls running up, kissing you. You know, that's what we were thinking about all the time, coming home maybe as our parents did, but that wasn't the case. Anyway, on March 29th of every year now is Vietnam Veterans Day. They designate March 29th because in 1973, on March 29th, was the last boots on the ground. Also, on March 30th is Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day. On any of these days, if you see a Vietnam veteran, I know you could tell us by, we usually have our Vietnam hat or shirt on, and say welcome home. That really means a lot to us. It's that healing process that goes on. We really appreciate that all the time. And of course, you don't have to do it on these days. You could do it anytime you see us. So that's my presentation. I hope you understand now why I call this Then We Came Home. If you want to contact me, feel free to my email is postalvan@aol.com. I know AOL. I'm an old guy. What can I say? Also, I made a lot of videos on YouTube. And if you search my name in YouTube, Van Barbary, I have over 300 videos, but I have about 5 of them I made for honoring Vietnam vets that I think you would like. And you could also take a picture of that and take you right to my YouTube station. So thank you very much. I appreciate that you made it through this far. And God bless everybody. Take care of yourselves.